Hey everyone, so in this video we're going to take a look at Traps and Obstacles Pack by Fubu Studios. Those of you who watch this channel a bunch probably recognize that name as I have reviewed a few packs by them. In this pack, they're definitely going for a kind of toy-like quality when you think of a company like Playskool, something like that where you have a very small set of colors and everything has this kind of whimsical look to it. As you can see, this pack, as of the time of this recording, is about 6 months old. Very small. It's only 3 megabytes. Again, the materials, to the best of my knowledge, don't even have a texture, so it's just a solid color, and then there's your typical lit shader coloring it. So there's not even any textures, just solid colors. The current price for this is just under $5 USD, so $4.99 USD. And as always, decide for yourself if you feel it's worth it. We'll quickly look at the demo scene, and then I will show you an implementation that I am working on. So as typical, when you download something by Fubu, it gets put into the folder called Packages, and then Traps and Obstacles for this particular pack. And then within Traps and Obstacles, you then have the typical type of assets. Now we're going to take a look at the demo scene, which is on the screen. And then we'll just, the scene does not have a scroll on it, so there's like no rigid body or anything, so we'll just scroll across. But as you can see, everything is, you basically have 4 or 5 colors. You have like a red or an orangish color, a blue, purple, white. That's about it. And some of these, as you can see, there is a particle system. And that's something I'm going to get to in just a minute about one odd thing. So like each one of these has a particle system. That sort of goes back and forth. That goes up and down. These swing. So most of these are animated. You got a Tesla coil. This is a spring. Spinning blades. Some of these are just meant to be obstacles, so this isn't animated. This does have a roll animation, couple pendulum type traps. I'll get to why that's darker than the other ones in just a minute. And so, like I said, most of these are animated. And I'll get to why that one is darker as well. Okay, so what's going on is a couple things. So first of all, if you go into the prefab folders and you go to animated, that even though it says animated, what do you notice? No particle system. So if you want the particle system, you actually would not use the prefab. You'd have to create a new prefab by dragging and dropping it from the scene, which is easy to do. You can just take the obstacle, and I'll just put it into a different folder so it doesn't mess anything up. Call it original prefab. Yeah, and it can, there we go. And now you can see that it does have the flamethrower. So for whatever reason, the prefab folder doesn't have some of the animation. So the prefab folder does not have the fire for either one of these for some reason. So just be mindful so people aren't confused. It's a bit of a nitpick, but if you want the fire effect, you want the particle systems, you're going to have to create a new prefab just by drag and dropping that the prefab, for whatever reason, doesn't actually have it. And this one doesn't seem to have an animation at all. It's easy enough to add an animation, to add a rigid body, and then a script. And I think that's, as far as the overview, is all I really wanted to mention, and then I'll show you an implementation. Okay, so why are these darker? So as I mentioned, if you click on, we'll click on this one, and if you drill down, you'll see there's no texture. So it has a material and it has a color, but that's it. There's like no texture applied to it. Anyways, so what I wanted to do, I wasn't going to create whole new textures for this, but what I did want to do is I wanted to look a little bit more realistic. So if we click on him, you'll see what I did. You'll see that I added different materials. So this has a metallic effect, and there's smoothness, that kind of thing. So I added a very simple metallic effect to it. So I didn't add any textures, but I did add a metallic effect. And I'll get back to the textures at the end. One more thing about that. So that's why some of these are darker. These are the ones that I'm currently using in my project, and I just altered the um, the materials so as that they had a more metallic look to them. Okay, so let's just quickly add a scroll to this so you can see it in work, going through as like a demo mode, and then I'll show you what I've been working on. So physics, we'll add a rigid body, we'll show off gravity, and we'll just create a quick script. And we'll call this cam con. And it really annoys me to no end that rigid bodies don't have an ability to set an initial rotation or angular rotation, velocity, angular velocity or velocity. I don't know why Unity won't do that. So it kind of annoys me that you have to write a script just for this. So we will just do get component, and we'll do rigid body, and we'll do velocity, and we'll do, I think it's +2 along the x-axis. Oops. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. And again, this is just so you can see the scrolling of the, and so you can see all the animations. So like I said, for whatever reason, that doesn't have an animation, but that has fire. That has fire. That goes back and forth. That smushes them. It's a spring. So again, kind of whimsical, cartoonish, like a toy. And it doesn't actually look so good. It looks really kind of dark here. But you'll see in the project, which I'll get to in just a second. I just wanted you to be able to see all the animations. I think there's just one or two more. Yep, that's it. So that's the fan. Okay, so let's get into the actual project. So the implementation is very similar to what I did with the voxel framework. So in that, I created a grid along the bottom that you could click on, and when you click on, it would instantiate the block of choice. This works almost exactly the same way. So let's go ahead and go to scenes. And the one I was working on most recently, I believe, was the parking lot, which I believe is outside too. Yeah. And much of this is just placeholder. This is a character from Downrain DC. I probably won't use him in the final version. I'm still thinking of making this a combination of traps and maybe first person rather than third person control, because there's already games like Orcs Must Die and Fortnite that have trap building, trap placement, and um, trap building, trap placement, and that kind of thing. So I want to be able to differentiate itself. Honestly, it's my opinion that Fortnite really ripped off Orcs Must Die, because Orcs Must Die was doing the whole trap-based strategy long before Fortnite ever came around. But having said that, Orcs Must Die also wasn't the first one to have a trap-based game mechanic. The first one I can really think of in modern gaming would be on the PS. It was either the PS1 or 2. I can't remember when the first one came out. And at least in the States, it was called Tecmo Deception. I think in other parts of the world, it might have been called Devil's Deception. And one of the later editions, I think, was called Trapped. But ultimately, in those games, it was strategy based, where you would use like oversized traps to stop enemies. That very much used like a cascading mechanism where you would drop like a pumpkin on the head of an attacker. They would stumble forward, hit another trap. It would launch them into another trap. And the whole idea is you had to get more and more consecutive traps where they were basically like perma-stunned. And each trap would do consecutively more damage because it was a combo basically. So anyways, you can see this looks much better here, which this does have like a metallic look to it rather than a plasticky look. Same thing for this. So I'm not quite sure why it's so dark on the other one, but it looks right here. And so pretty easily, it looks a lot less like a toy and a lot more like it's metallic. As a final note, I did reach out to the devs and I mentioned that it'd be nice to have a non-cartoonish version so if they themselves could do something like this and make them look like metal and stone and wood. According to them, they said that was actually already on their schedule, so we might eventually see that. I certainly don't want to make any promises for them because I'm not part of that team, but I did want to let you know that I provided that feedback to them and that according to them, they are indeed looking at adding textures rather than just having the flat shaded color. So I think that's about it. So will I ever complete this? Well, you know me, I complete some projects and don't complete others. I did complete the voxel framework that's available on itch.io if you want to download it. I did kind of complete the Halloween game, the free Halloween game that's also on itch.io if you wish to download it. In that case, though, I got sick just before Halloween, so I lost a week of development time. So when you lose 1/4 of your development time, not, you can only expect just so much. But anyways, so that's about it. So I am currently trying to see if I can make something out of this, and it would probably take like it's obviously not survival horror, but I might take that kind of framework because Orcs Must Die already has like a fantasy framework. So I'm thinking of taking the kind of survival horror framework. So first you start out in front of the parking lot of the building, then you'll be like in a reception area, then you'll be like in maybe a residential area, then you'll be in a laboratory, so on and so forth. So you'll have like 12 or 15 locations, and there will be a vague story being told. And again, I'm not looking to rip off what anyone else did. If I can come up with enough original content, then I'll proceed with it. But we'll say it's still just trying to figure out if there's an original take I can add onto this. Like I said, both the cases of Fortnite and Orcs Must Die, there's already a third-person controller, so I was thinking of possibly switching to first person or possibly taking like a Plants vs. Zombies approach and that you don't have a controller for a person at all, that it's all basically remote traps. Maybe you're like a security officer and you're dropping traps with a drone or that kind of thing as to explain how the traps are just appearing. This over here is just meant to be the resource that gets spent when you place a trap. So as you see, the number goes down. And there's a few things I added, like that trap broke. So I already put a counter in there where every time a trap is stepped on, a variable gets reduced. And once the variable gets to 0, it gets destroyed. So that's one of the controls that you can't just spam out a bunch of stuff and call it a day. That you have to make, as traps are getting more and more damaged, you're going to have to replace them. Okay, so that should about do it. So that's Traps and Obstacles by Fubu Studios. The modifications I made to it to make the materials look more metallic, an implementation of how to use them. And if there's anything else you'd like to see, just let me know, and I'll see what I can do. If you enjoyed this, please consider leaving a like, and that should about do it. So please do enjoy the rest of your day.